One day I saw a bumper sticker on the teacher's car at the middle school when I dropped my son off, and it said, "Remember who you wanted to be." And I wasn't who I really thought at this stage in my life I was going to do it. And I met so many other women like me that we had kind of lost ourselves in suburbia, lost our mojo. We lived vicariously through our husbands' careers, our kids' lives, everything else, and we lost our sense of self. And like I said, I was a connector. I knew everybody in the neighborhood. I knew what they were doing. And after I saw that bumper sticker, I put an email together randomly. There was no Facebook. There was no Zooms. There was none of those things.
Yeah.
And I just said, you know what? We're still smart. Maybe we should get together and figure out how we could have some level of a professional career and keep our families and our personal commitments sacred.
Love that.
So it was an email and a bumper sticker that started this whole thing.
Wow.
And 42 women showed up in my living room as a result of that one email.
Wow.
And that started it all.
Amazing. Hey everybody, welcome to Finding the Upside. I'm so happy that you chose to join me today. I am in the studio today and I have an incredible guest, Tara Gilvar. Say hello, Tara.
Hi, everyone.
I'm so happy you're here with me today. We are doing an installment of One Tough Chick. Those of you who watch and listen know that this is a series where I feature women who are passionate about empowering other women, have an inspirational story, have either started their own business or had a empowered journey for themselves, and shining a light on those women to inspire more women to do more. So Tara, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to give everybody a quick introduction to who you are. Tara is a natural connector and advocate for empowering women to live with purpose, authenticity, and confidence. And throughout her life and career, she's been dedicated to bringing like-minded individuals together to form meaningful, mutually supportive relationships. She started in politics working for campaigns in the Massachusetts area, and in this role, she promoted worthy candidates. From there, that led her to advertising, where she used her natural talent of storytelling and worked in top Boston agencies representing national brands. For the past 16 years, and what we'll focus a lot on today, is Tara's journey. She's channeling her experience and passion, founding and leading B.I.G, which stands for Believe, Inspire, Grow, which is a global women's empowerment organization. And under her leadership, B.I.G has grown into a vibrant, values-driven community with over 14,000 members worldwide. I am so excited to hear more about how you got here. So Tara, would you take it from here and just share a little bit more to fill in some of the blanks in how you got to where you are today and how and why you started B.I.G?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thank you for having me. So my story began like the story of millions of other women. When you have children, your career and what you think you were going to be when you grew up changes drastically.
Yes.
And that happened for me. In 1996, I did the ball drop in Times Square with my professional career in the advertising agency. And it was a pretty big deal to be able to be there.
Yeah.
But I was also 7.5 months pregnant. So I kind of say that wasn't the only ball that dropped in my life.
That's great.
Yeah. But, I also lived this idea that I was going to be different than the generation before me. I was going to have it all. I was going to have the career and I was going to have the kids and I was going to do this and that and travel. And, and then you have this child. And those of you who are moms know that, the idea of number one, being away more than the time that you're with them is wrenching.
Yes.
And then economically, especially back in the 90s, when 45% of your paycheck goes to taking care of paying the babysitters and the childcare providers, it doesn't make economic sense to stay out of the workforce, to stay in the workforce. So I was at that crossroads, and I, like a lot of women, left my career and landed in this crazy world called the suburbs. And, it's not where we thought we were going to do it, right? We thought, we were going to be like these go-getters. This was our time, and, I was blessed and very grateful and very fortunate to be able to stay home. Not everybody can do that. But I always felt like there was something that I was supposed to be doing more than motherhood. And I think I talked to you, Maria. No man ever says, when they say, so what do you do? They don't say, oh, I'm just a father, right?
Yes.
But
True.
we get that woman saying, and we just had Mother's Day, and you say, you're not just anything, but you hear women say, oh, I just stay at home with the kids, like as if it's not the hardest job in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did that. It wasn't what I thought I was going to do. I was seeking, like, who am I going to be now? I lived vicariously through my kids' lives. I had the best birthday parties. I had the best, things through my kids. I was in every
Mm-hmm.
committee, everything you could ever imagine for the kids. So I thought, but it was really for me, right? Trying to find that identity again that I had when I had my career. And I had subsequently stayed out for almost 13 years, which is sort of the average amount of time women leave the workforce. 13 is like the
Yeah.
magical amount to take care of other people,
Yeah.
because that's what a lot of women do. And one day I saw a bumper sticker on the teacher's car at the middle school when I dropped my son off, and it said, remember who you wanted to be. And I was like, my Jersey girl would swear, which is what I did, but I won't do it here. But so I was like,
Okay.
you are not that girl. You're not that 5-year-old girl that said, what do you want to be when you grow up, and answer that question. You're not the girl who was picking up her, what she was going to do in her college degree. And I wasn't who I really thought at this stage in my life I was going to do it. And I met so many other women like me that we had kind of lost ourselves in suburbia, lost our mojo. We lived vicariously through our husbands' careers, our
Mm-hmm.
kids' lives, everything else. And we lost our sense of self. And like I said, I was a connector. I knew everybody in the neighborhood. I knew what they were doing. I said, oh, you should know her. You should know her. You should know her. And
Mm-hmm.
after I saw that bumper sticker, I put an email together randomly. This is in 1996. There was no Facebook. There was no Zooms. There was none
Yeah.
of those things.
Yeah.
And I just said, you know what? We're still smart. Maybe we should get together and figure out how we could have some level of a professional career and keep our families and our personal commitments sacred.
Love that.
So it was an email and a bumper sticker that started this whole thing.
Wow.
And 42 women showed up in my living room as a result of that one email.
Wow.
And that started it all.
Amazing. Amazing. Your story is so rich with so many good things, and I wanted to just expand on and respond to some of the things that you said. I mean, first of all, the entire, reason and that bumper sticker and the way Big started is really amazing. I mean, 1996. So how long is that now? That's a
16
long time.
years 16 years. My youngest child was in kindergarten, which is where when you think you're free at last, right? Oh, my third
Yes.
one goes to school, and you realize 11:30 in the morning and a preschool comes really fast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and now she's college graduate, got in the working world, and is just turning 24 years old. So yeah,
Wow.
she was in kindergarten.
So, I mean, perfect, like story of how that incubated, and 42 women in your living room. And after that, I guess you gained some momentum to keep going, which was great because you saw the impact you could have. Talk to me about that and the impact that Big has had and some of the things that, grew beyond that first meeting in your living room that
Yeah.
surprised you even.
I'm surprised every day. That doesn't change. That's why I do
Yeah.
this. Keep
Yeah.
doing it, because there's always something that you're doing to help change the trajectory without even realizing it. So in that room in February of 2009, those 42 women, there was a woman in that room. And this is how it started. I had no intention of starting a women's organization, none at all. I was really looking to see maybe there was a PR job that was something I could do from my suburban community,
Hmm.
and that I could do while the kids were in school. That's how small my big intention was for this.
Wow.
And there was a woman in the room, and she didn't know any of the other women. And we all knew each other, but we did not deeply know each other. We did
Hmm.
not know that some of these women had, Ivy League degrees, or were PhDs or had law degrees. We just knew them as Tommy's mother and Susie's mother and, Bob's wife, in
Hmm.
suburbia. And she introduced herself, and we asked 3 questions. Who were you? Who are you now? Who do you want to be, and what's stopping you?
Mm.
And she was an executive in the garment district in New York, and she was the primary breadwinner of her family, and she traveled all around the globe, and she loved her career. except that she had a husband who was able to kind of fill in for the kids after school, and it worked, lots of travel. But at one point, the husband gave her an ultimatum. He said to her, "It's your career or our marriage."
Mm.
And she chose the marriage, and he divorced her anyway.
Yeah.
And so after a year of a very messy divorce and a major income shift because she quit her job, she was in my living room, and she was not the same version of the person she was when she was a career executive. She had very low self-esteem. She was very confused. What she did for a career at this point, not that it was a bad decision, but she went from being an executive around the globe to walking dogs in the community.
Mm.
And she said that's not a bad thing. They love you unconditionally and
Yeah.
don't care what you wear and always think, give you love. And but it wasn't her passion. And so they said, so what the last question was, so who do you want to be and what's stopping you? She said, well, this is going to sound crazy, but despite the bad divorce, I always wanted to open my own bridal shop.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that every woman deserves that special day in their life. But I have no money. I have no business experience. I don't know anything about the bridal industry. So I guess it's just a dream that's past. Yeah. And she was in her 40s, maybe early 40s. So then the other women started to introduce, but everybody kept going back to her and said, open that bridal shop. I know inventory. I know I can help you. I know resources. I know places that would be perfect for bridal shop venues. And she literally sat up higher in her seat and said, well, there's this older woman I walk dogs for, and she's very wealthy. And she had told me one day that if I ever got serious about this idea, that she maybe would give me some seed money.
Wow.
But she would want to do it in a very legitimate way. So she would need a business plan. And she goes, but I don't know what a business plan is.
Oh my gosh.
And miraculously, or not miraculously, there was a woman in the room. And she says, I write business plans for small businesses and I will help you.
And that was the very first meeting in your living room?
That was February of 2009.
2009. Wow.
And February of 2010, we were in her bridal shop. So 1 year, 1 month later.
Wow.
And today, she generates more than $2 million in income and is one of the top bridal shops in all of New Jersey.
Wow. Amazing.
And she was just pursuing a childhood dream.
What's so amazing about that, there's so much in that. First of all, the power of all of the support in the room and how everyone came together. And I know you and I have talked a lot about this, women supporting other women and giving the support, giving the knowledge, contributing, bringing things to the table, and also standing in her belief gap, right? That she could do it. The power of what happened in that first meeting and how crazy that must have been for you to see it all kind of unfold.
Well, that's what happened. Women said to me, this needed to continue. Yeah. And I'm like, this? They said, whatever. We literally had the hair on our arms stand up when somebody said, this has to keep going. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here, but let's keep it going. And that's how we started it.
And maybe that was the divine thing in that moment to show the power, the impact, and really what it could do to start that.
It was. Absolutely. I came out of there so adrenaline rushed, and everybody was. And I was like, I saw magic.
Yeah. So one of the things that I definitely wanted to talk about is, Big Today is, talk to me about Big Today, because that grew from that first meeting. I know I've had some exposure to Big. I've been to some big meetings. I was a member at one point. Talk about the structure, because it's a global organization at this point, but it works where there's all these different pods that are these local areas. Talk to me about that, and also talk to me about how many states and countries. Talk to me about the reach you have right now.
Okay. Well, we, like everybody, everything changed after COVID. So we're reinventing. But so at our peak, we probably had 50 what we call pods, which are the local community groups. And they're run, and again, before Zoom, so before COVID, everything was pretty much in person. Which is beautiful, but it's also difficult to keep the glue together among the groups because we didn't have these kind of technologies to help us. We were literally on group phone calls, right? But each community has its own set of leadership teams because and I know that when you live in your town, it's your town, and the town next to you is not your town. And you want to be with your people, and yet you might want to go over and visit those people, but you may not want to be with them all the time. And so we learned that very quickly, that every community has a flavor, and it's a grassroots effort. The leaders have to come from that community. And they end up having a network of people that they can introduce this concept of empowerment to women, for women entrepreneurs. And that know, like, and trust starts with the leadership team. And, I couldn't start big in a town that I didn't live in, because it has to come from within the community where there's trust. And so our leadership are these community leaders, whether they know it or not, that start this. They take a risk. They put themselves in that vulnerable position. They take, like, well, who do you think you are to do that in this town kind of risk? And they start it in each town. And so we have organically grown. In New Jersey, at one point, we had 50 groups. We, after COVID, the leadership, that's the vulnerability, is that not everybody is a leader and not everybody will step up to leadership. And that's a shame. That's a real bad shame, because there's a lot of leaders sitting on the sidelines right now.
Very true.
But if we can give them the self-esteem and confidence like we gave Patricia, then they can go forward and take away that fear. But we have grown. We've been, I want to say, since we started. Now, they're not thriving anymore because leaders stop or change, but we've been in, I want to say, 125 different communities.
Wow.
In the last 16 years.
Wow.
We've had pods in Chicago, outside of Atlanta. And then when COVID happened, we said, okay, let's stick to where we're strongest.
Yeah.
And we stuck to the East Coast. And we're predominantly in New Jersey, but only in the Essex and Middlesex area. And then we expanded into Connecticut. So we're in Fairfield County in Connecticut. Then one of our amazing women who loved big in New Jersey moved to North Carolina. So she started it down in North Carolina, and we've got 4 or 5 groups down there.
Awesome.
I live in Florida now, so we have 3 groups here. We have an online digital group, which is Big USA, for anybody that doesn't have a physical pod. And the idea would that be that we would spur out of that into local groups when we find the right leadership team. And then we have a sister organization for the past 9 years over in Europe called Costa Women. And they do similar things that we do in Big. And once a month we collaborate, their women and our women, and we do international presentations for each other. And we're actually bringing a group in September to Spain, to Malaga, Spain, to meet the women.
Love that. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And what I also love about that, I mean, what's interesting is all companies, right? All people, everybody, companies, people had to go through a period of shifting and pivoting, and how are we going to continue doing what we're doing during COVID? And you were no different, and you came out on the other side with still, even though things might look different, still a very thriving, and in some ways,
we're rebuilt. We have less pods, but same amount of members.
Yeah,
right.
Greater reach, which is amazing. And I mean, that's the story of the upside, if you will, of the pandemic, is the opportunities that came out of that, even though it was such a crazy time. And
Zoom saved us. Zoom was what
100%.
saved us.
Yeah. And you know what? Like every corporation, like every business, a lot of the things that were relied on during COVID became standard operating procedure, which is amazing. And again, looking at it, some people are like, oh, I love the in-person and this and that. Sure. But in some ways, it changed the reach of who you could impact and how many people you could serve, which is...
You can teleport yourself to Connecticut from North Carolina, vice versa. And your world gets bigger, really. I mean, there's people that have connected with people over in Europe that have become friends and actually meet each other and travel with each other. I mean, you wouldn't have that. I mean, when you get challenged at the end of the day, people say, why do you keep doing this? I'm like, because when you pick a name like Big as the name of your organization, you've got to walk the walk.
Yes, you got to be big, right? You got to be big. You got to walk the walk as well as talk the talk, right?
Right.
I love that. That's amazing. I am so inspired by just the story of how you started this and the reach that you have. And I know you and I have talked about having an impact, right? And that was part of I guess maybe the passion that you didn't know existed when you were trying to find your own identity. Yeah. And I think a
I
lot of,
never ever thought I would be running an organization like this in terms of, especially one that yields toward business. I never took a business course. I didn't took an
yeah,
accounting course, but you can learn these things, or
100.
surround yourself with the people, as you know,
Yeah.
who have the skills you don't, and tap into them when you need those skills.
What I also love about just the whole organic growth of it, and also just the natural things in terms of the values that kind of drive it, is the collective that it is, the collective support, the coming together, the connecting people who know things you don't, and really at your leadership, really guiding that and keeping that foundation, I think is so powerful, and something that as women, we need that, especially
Yeah.
now. And I also wanted to go back to something that you talked about in your opening, because I think it's an important point that still exists today in your motherhood journey. Trying to choose between working and paying for childcare, right? And so
Hasn't
many women,
changed.
yeah, nothing has changed. And unfortunately, it probably is a little worse now, even because the cost of childcare is just insane. And for a woman to have to make that choice between her family and her career is crazy, like, to me, that in this country, right? And and then you have the other factor, where we're the only industrialized country that has no paid leave, right?
Crazy.
It's
It
insane.
really is
It's
crazy.
insane.
I mean, to the point that you're making, so this started in 2009, and my oldest daughter would have been 11,
Hmm.
right? 11 and a half.
Hmm.
She's 29 now and just had our first grandson.
Oh, so
She
now
had
she's in that cycle.
a phenomenal career, and it was a virtual job.
Yeah.
But the boundaries of virtual are, there are no boundaries.
Hmm.
They expect you online at 11 p.m. at night. They expect
Hmm.
you to answer you. And if they're in California and the time difference or whatever,
Yeah.
it is a different form of slavery. I mean,
Yeah.
we used to have to
Yeah.
sit in the cubbies.
Yeah.
They have to sit in front of the computer. And
Yeah.
she made a difficult decision economically to leave, even though it was you would think, oh well, you can work from home. It doesn't matter. Work follows you everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's the disrespect of boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it 100%, this is an issue that we're dealing with, that we have to navigate, and also as women support one another in this. I personally, I get pretty charged up about this, and I see myself trying to help the advocacy that there is for changing that, and changing this condition, because I can't imagine another generation of mothers going through that, especially with the economic struggle that there is now. I mean, I'm going to be straight with you. I was the major breadwinner in my family, and so I could not leave. But childcare was very expensive, and it's the reason why I have one child. It
Yeah.
legitimately is the reason I have one child, because I did the math and I'm like, two kids in daycare. Well,
Yeah.
unless I waited till one got out of daycare, I would be too old. I don't want to get pregnant that late,
And we're women that have economic advantages. And
Correct.
then, right?
Correct.
It doesn't, and the sad part is the brilliance that sits on the sidelines, right? I
100%.
mean, there's so much untapped brilliance,
Yeah.
and we're not giving that oxygen to that. We're not giving resources to that. We're not letting women be their best version. Like,
Yeah.
you need women who have good work ethics. I'm not saying
Yeah.
everybody's going to do the job the right
Yeah.
way if you're not watching them, but if you find those people, let them do it the way that it can get done,
Yeah.
right? There's enough tools and technology that can help move it forward. You're
Yeah.
going to lose all your good people because they're not, if you have the same values as them, they're not going to give up family over whatever this job thing is.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's so many elements that could help and fix it, right? You have that what companies can do to set up that environment. At the same time, at some point, policies have to be in place for the public
100%.
to, right? Because
It
as
has
you
to have
said,
boundaries.
we are women who have the resources. What about the ones who do not, right? And when you say there's brilliance on the sideline, not at 100%, like, we need women in the workforce. The Global Economic Forum there was a woman who had talked about this. I love her work, Brashmani, and she talked about it's an economic issue because all of those women are out of the workforce if they have to choose between caring for their
There's so
children
many.
or
And that's why Big is such a great organization, because we give those people a place to kind of figure out a path. Where do you do with the next part of your life? If you're not
right,
going to go to corporate America, and
right,
we've never had anybody that we've ever known who voluntarily went back to corporate America,
right,
right? They
right,
didn't want that anymore.
right.
But entrepreneurship is another mountain to climb. And you don't know it if you don't know it. And you have to learn it with each other. And you have to build a basic virtual company
Yeah,
with other women who have the same values and who have the same ideas and the same thoughts. And you and I both talked about this, is women do not just build a company and leave the rest of their life on a back burner and say, yeah, I'll deal with that at 7 o'clock tonight.
right.
We integrate our entire life 24/7.
Yes.
And, even you in corporate America knew what your son or daughter were going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that night. You knew how much milk was in the refrigerator. You knew how much laundry you still had to do,
Hmm.
right? That is not what our counterparts, God bless them. They have the ability so much better to compartmentalize than we do.
Hmm.
We have estrogen, and that keeps us reminding us of things so that we don't, leave the baby on the bus,
Yeah,
which is a
yeah.
good thing.
Or in the back seat, right?
But we also carry those burdens through
Yeah,
every part of our life. And in order to be effective at anything, we have to have our entire lives kind of supported so that we can put our business ideas forward. They'll
yeah,
always be backburnered. If your mother falls down the stairs and gives you a call, you want to be the one. If your child's teacher calls, you want it. The nurse calls. If you have a bad mammogram or your sister has a bad mammogram, those are the times we give up everything,
yeah.
right? We don't have anybody else to do those things, nor do we want someone else to take
Very
that
true.
spot for us. So how do you step out for a couple of months and focus on those people and not blow up your business?
Yeah,
You have to work together, right? And we have
yep,
to have each other, and we have to support each other, and we have to somebody say, I can help you with that, or I'll
yeah,
step in for a couple of months. And
yeah,
the sisterhood, you mentioned it, it's a culture
yeah.
that people are following, right? If you believe and trust, because women can be so brutal and so horrific to each other in a
Hmm.
bad culture. They
Hmm.
could be so giving and so loving and so authentic and so supportive in a good culture if there's
Yeah,
trust there,
yeah,
right? So we try to put that little bubble of trust in there and say, oh, in here, there's no bad idea.
yeah,
We're here to support each other. If this isn't your thing, stay out there,
yep,
right?
yep,
Because as I told you a couple of the other stories, that when it all push comes to shove and real life throws you really bad things, it's your sisterhood organization as well as your family that are there to catch you when you fall or when you need to be caught. And
yeah.
I don't know if you want me to share one of the
Yeah,
stories that
it's
I
so
shared with
powerful. I
you.
do. I want to comment on that. I mean, you're so right. Like the collective community and the support. What's coming to mind for me is, that cliche phrase, like it takes a village to raise a child, but it really takes a village to live and navigate all these things that you're talking about, right? And so how beautiful to have that support, especially at a time when community is inaccessible to a lot of people and they've lost that. So I'd
Mhm.
love for you to share another story. I know you have other ones about just the impact of big. And you mentioned, just if you have a bad mammogram or something's happening with family, like please tell me any other story that kind of resonates with the kind of support that big has provided, and any of the details that you can share about a personal story.
Yeah. So, 99.9% of people come into Big because it's they come in probably for the business and the
Yeah,
networking, right?
yeah,
Just like they would come into any
of course.
other thing. It makes logical sense if you're an entrepreneur to be surrounded by a couple hundred women and have
Yeah,
access, especially if those women are your target audience. And so
yeah,
many women build businesses for other women. So it makes sense that looks like a potential customer. And
yeah,
that's what they come in. And quite honestly, it's our little trick of a door opener, because that's not really what we are. We're really not helping you build your business, even though that's important to you. And we do that. We're really our mission is to help you live a happy, fulfilled life.
Love that.
And your business can change a million times. We've had people who've had, 4 different businesses and 2 different husbands, but they're the same person. So we're there throughout their life. And one of the women that I think I mentioned, this is one of the most powerful stories. And I'm just so blessed to have been there. As excruciatingly painful as it was that we had a woman who was in here. She was all business all the time. She did not need, she had her male hat on, and she was going to sell the crap out of her stuff. And she did. She had a carpet company, and she was going and selling all of us carpet, and we bought it. And she just loved it for that part of it. And she didn't need women in her life, really. She wasn't looking for girlfriends. She wasn't attending any of the soft parts of the organization. She just wanted sales and marketing and LLCs and but she became friends with a lot of women across over the years, despite that wasn't her intention. Mm-hmm. And she had that tragic situation of when her 12-year-old daughter was bullied and took her own life. And she was devastated in a way as a mother that she couldn't relate even to her own, small circle. Mm-hmm. As a mother, she just felt like her world crushed. And she called me in the middle of the night from the hospital saying, I just need women. I just need a sisterhood. And, it was, I couldn't believe it, but she was there. She called me, and then we rallied, and we still rally. Mm-hmm. And she is a force for nature, but now her force is about stopping the bullying message. She was selling carpet, and now it's not as important as making sure that the people stop bullying middle school kids.
She took that pain in her story and redirected it to purpose to help others, which is so amazing. That's such a tragic story, and it happened in our own communities. We were all aware of what was going on, and now she speaks everywhere. If I'm not mistaken.
Everywhere. She actually changed state law. She's actually changed federal law. Mm-hmm. She made schools responsible for things. She made parents responsible for what their kids say. And she thought her purpose was to sell carpet.
Yeah. Amazing. And again, in the same way that B.I.G has empowered women, stood in their belief gap with businesses, you could do this, like the bridal shop. The same holds true for, yes, everybody rallied around her, but also giving her the power and the momentum and the support to start this new purpose of really having an impact worldwide with her pain and her story. So amazing.
Yeah, because then it was all about women, right? Yeah. Then it was all about the heart center. Like, no woman in the world would want to have that happen to them, and activating women for the core reason of their existence, right? And we don't always know what that is. And, a lot of times you fall into your job because of circumstances.
True.
And, then you get economically in a situation where you're dependent on the paycheck, which is completely understandable.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out of it. But, COVID taught us in 2008, when I started B.I.G, it was after the recession and women were coming back. These life moments teach you life is really, really short, and you only have one time to live your real purpose. And wouldn't it be a shame if you didn't get a chance to do that?
Yeah, for sure. And also just the things that come your way, like you never can know or expect what life is going to throw you. I think you said that earlier. And then being able to have that ability and that support to then turn that into something else is like amazing.
Yeah. As tragic as that was, and it was tragic, it rallied so many thousands of people. It changed the trajectory. Mallory is her name, and people know the story.
Yes.
Mallory's legacy lives on way, 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 way beyond the average person's legacy, right? The young girl. And the impact that it made on literally saving, not women's lives, middle school kids' lives.
Middle school. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the bigger purpose. You don't have to be religious to know that, there's a higher purpose than what we do every single day.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, just as women, I think it's important to kind of speak and give voice to this. We usually don't find what that is unless we are able to kind of tap in and sometimes it's because of circumstance, because something that happens in our life, like Diane's story, but also I think it's getting in touch with what is that and what do I want to do and how do I want to impact, right? I know that
Right.
was
You
my
may
own
not know. You
story.
may not
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that um just my own journey, maybe you probably agree with me that when you're in it with the kids and the job and the this and the that, it's kind of too noisy,
Yeah.
to always be able to do that. Um but I'll be honest. I mean, I know that in the height of my career, I was doing what I needed to do for my family. You said getting you need the career, you need the salary, all of those things. But I sat there one day, similar to your moment with the bumper sticker, but in a different way for me, where I was sitting around women who were actually in, you know, uh, their efforts with their career and their professional job or business was impacting people in a different way. And I sat back and I was like, God, I want to have more of an impact because what I'm doing, I feel like I don't. One had a daycare, one was an ultrasound tech, one was a occupational therapist working with disabled children, like the lives and the impact she was having. And that was kind of my moment that what do I want to contribute and how do I want to impact? So I think it's interesting how it can be something that forces you to see that, sometimes tragically, or
Or you can make a conscious choice. Yeah.
correct,
And it
correct.
all takes courage,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, you can make lots of reasons why, listen, we never tell somebody quit your corporate job and start your own business.
no,
Like that is just not, that's a fool's decision, right? We
yeah,
live on planet Earth and you need money to make the world, feed your kids. We
yep,
understand that.
yeah,
But if you are going to start to do this stuff, if you are going to, don't eliminate 3/4 of your life to focus on this because
mm-hmm,
it doesn't work, right?
mm-hmm,
Because no matter what will happen, you can scale a business, you can be making money in the bank. At what price,
yeah,
right? At what price are you going to look back and go, I wasn't there for my kid, or I didn't get to go to the doctors with my mother and she's no longer with us? Or at what price do you pay to try to, so the balance, of which there is never a balance for women, we always have that debate, but
yeah,
to be more well-rounded, to be able to feed, like we are a holistic entity as a person,
yes,
right? Our brains, we have two emotional centers in our brains. Our male counterparts only have one. That's
mm-hmm,
beautiful and awful because we're always juggling,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
We're the nurturers on the planet. We are and we're not, we are supposed to be those people,
yeah.
it's a good thing. So you don't always have to take the more transactional approach. You can take the relationship approach, and you can be successful because women will, who know, like, and trust each other, will do anything for each other. They will, including buying all their stuff from each
Yeah.
other.
Well, what I love about the foundation too is you talked about this container, that big is, and the support and the collective. And it's true. There are so many places where women can be awful to one another, and not support one another, right? So creating that container and that culture, that good culture that does that, we can accomplish so much more together than by and supporting one another rather than tearing each other down. So setting that's very similar to the work that I do with companies, that it's setting that culture to have that right environment actually creates a better impact and a better outcome. Same here in terms of this
People know
community.
that, right? In
Yeah.
corporate America, when you have a manager or an executive that believes in you, that understands, that
Yes.
can show empathy and
Yeah.
humility, and isn't all about putting the grinding the sausage, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And those people are loyal in ways you would never imagine,
Yeah.
right? And they stay true to the business, and they're faithful to the ability of the company, and they trust through the bad times. I mean, it's when you get your ego in the way that you end up alienating people.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just what's striking me is that it's just really the same foundations that create that. You talked about trust, relationship, right? It's the same foundations that apply in big in this community, in the sisterhood,
100%. We're
that
human.
also
We're
apply.
human.
Yeah.
We're human. And
Well,
COVID really exposed it, and then all of a sudden we forgot
we
again.
forgot again. I know. I know. It's like people want to get things back to normal. When I hear that, I'm like, no, like maybe the message was that we needed to change the operating system completely, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I say that facetiously, back to normal, because I don't think that was normal. But at the same time, like I agree, like we're humans, right? And I think we forget that. And in corporate business, a lot of times that is the issue. It's like you're dealing with human beings. If you forget that, then you lose sight of what it takes to really motivate them, support them, have the loyalty, get the loyalty. And the trust factor is huge. I mean, the trust capital and taking time building rapport and relationships, in this organization that you have, it's the same in any business, to have those same principles that make it optimized and really successful.
100%. I mean, gratitude goes much further than some money in the bank.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for
When people
sure.
feel, Brene Brown always says, right?
Yeah.
Brene Brown is people want to feel, that they're heard, validated, and that they
Mm-hmm.
belong, right?
Heard, value, seen, and belong.
And
Not,
belong,
yeah,
right? I
yeah.
mean, it sounds so obvious, but so many people don't feel that way.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because, part of the work I do, and I speak on this a lot, there's this metric that like makes me crazy. 52% of people who leave a job say it's because they feel like they didn't belong. That's more than half of the workforce walking out the door with something that can so easily be fixed, really, if you
But
make
it
a
has to
commitment.
be authentic. It has to be
100%
baked into culture
baked
because
in.
you can smell inauthenticity. Like I get people, now that I have a bunch of people that people want to know, they'll come to me and they're like, I'd love to have coffee with you and see how I can help you. And
Hmm.
I'm like, no, you don't. You want to have coffee with me to see how I can help you.
Uh-huh,
You're
uh-huh.
saying the
Kind of
words.
pick your brain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're saying the words, but you're
yeah,
not taking the time
yeah,
to get to know me,
yeah,
to talk to me, to build a rapport or relationship with me. You're just saying the words that you know that people should hear, but you're
yeah.
doing it in an inauthentic way. So that makes you worse than the person who didn't say them at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're so right. It has to be baked in and authentic, right? It's interesting because even in like the business world, people are trying to do this with programs, right? Mm. It's so inauthentic and so fake that it's so easily sniffed out. It does nothing. Actually, it deteriorates the trust even more, you
Yeah,
know?
it's really a sociology project that needs to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate that. And listen, we're not perfect. And I'm not
Sure.
saying, I mean, if we were, you would still be in big. Look at that. So we'll get you back in. But I'm just saying there's people that leave, right? Because
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it didn't resonate enough to them to want to stay. And I understand that. We're not the center of their universe. We're a part of their universe. But if the experience was done right,
Yeah.
it would be baked into someone's life like just like exercise or
Yeah.
something like that. It would be a part of who they are. And for the people that have really adopted what we hoped it would be, we have people that have been members for 15, 16 years.
Mhm.
But for those that come in and out, I always think, what didn't we give them? What didn't connect? Now I can't make them turn on their Zoom and I can't make them get in the car and go to their pod meeting. But what was it that was missing? I always think, what was it that was missing that they didn't feel compelled to do it? And that's like the ongoing struggle of an organization or even a business
Yeah.
entity. How and it changes all the time, right? Because now we want to attract a younger audience because a lot of the women that have been big for 15 years, they're starting to like slow down their business building.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or so how do we attract those? And it's hard. It's hard because the next generation, they communicate very differently. Their
Mhm.
values are different. The way they want to
Yeah.
experience every day of their life is different, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think well, I just want to say also, I think that it's so admirable that you are continually questioning what could we do better? What didn't we give this person? Because that's like the quintessential thing to improve, right? Whether
Right.
you're talking about from a personal level, from our own personal development, or a business, or an effort, or what have you. So I really commend that. But I also think that, even my own thing, you had said every pod has a flavor. I think that that's probably changed since COVID, since you went online. But, it was for me, I think, uh, just because I was introduced to it by someone, that probably wasn't the right pod for me. And that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's just like anything, right? It's just like
right.
where what neighborhood you live in, what school
Correct.
you go to, what company
Correct.
you go. And, it's just sometimes you just feel like, if I was there, maybe I
Yeah.
would make a difference.
Yeah. But I think what's great is that now that's probably alleviated some of that with the virtual and the online, because I think from what you told me, people can can attend anything online, right?
Right, right.
So you might get something different from the virtual than you get from the personal as well, because you've had
100%.
that expansion.
But the other thing that's changed since COVID is there are thousands and thousands and thousands of opportunities online, right?
Yeah.
That weren't there before.
Yeah.
The world knows Zoom now.
Yeah.
And so, yes, people want to be in person and want to be in the room with the people, but that takes a shower, it takes a car ride, it takes getting dressed, it takes like more time.
And it takes
So
more
that
time out of your day. Absolutely.
Right. And
Yes.
then
So
Zoom is great, but you know what? I'm going to put in a load of laundry. I'm not going to get on the Zoom. Like you have to, like, you can't figure it out. You just have to, and it's not for everybody all the time, right?
yeah.
Any of what we do is not for everybody all the time. But the satisfaction at the end of the day is it's not about how many, it's about the quality of how many people you might have helped. And I
Yeah.
know, and that's the part that I can put my head on the pillow and say, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't even know how many people we positively impacted, but I know
Yeah.
it's been a lot.
And that's the thing too, is knowing that you are impacting others, right? Even if the mission is you want to help as many people as possible, impact as many, but also as many people as you impact, they're also impacting others. So it's a ripple effect that's amazing.
Well, that's why
Uh,
you and I were talking about your conference. I mean, the idea
yes.
that big isn't always, I mean, my name is big, but bigger isn't always better,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it's an endless pursuit if all you're chasing
Yeah.
is numbers.
Correct. Yeah, you want the quality. And actually, we should, for the benefit of the audience. So, I'm hosting a conference here in New Jersey. Tara reached out to me, which was great. She was like, how could we help promote it? And I was like, wow, you're like all about your values, you're living it right there. And we also then, I said, let's partner, to give an opportunity for big members to come at a reduced price, to publicize it and support one another, and be able to spread the big message in the big community as well. It's here in New Jersey. We'll put all the information, of course, for big and for the event in the show notes. But I love working with like-minded women to support one another, and just really we're extending the reach that we have with both of our efforts, your organization and the event and the work that I do. So I
Well,
love that.
what I'm so glad about, and I really have to tell you, like I'm thinking, as sad as this might do, I was thinking about the members of my big organization in New Jersey, and we've had our own conferences in the past, and this year we weren't having one. And I
Hmm.
saw that one of our members was going to be one of your presenters, and
Hmm.
I'm like, well, that means that this could be our conference. And
Yeah.
then I remember thinking, is she going to think I have an ulterior motive here? Because people do get defensive, like, what's in it for you kind of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And what was in it for me was really just if we serve the women authentically, there is something in it for me. I wanted my women to be able to have
Right.
something to go to that was, special for them. So I guess that was in it for me. But if we give more as an entity without fear of not getting back, the
Hmm.
world, just a little bit, the world would be so much better if everybody gave and didn't count how many beans they got back for what they gave, right? With the right people, because
Yeah.
there will always be people who will take advantage. So
Yes.
smell out the culture, smell out the authenticity of the people, vet your people very carefully.
Yes. Yes.
But once you have some sort of understanding that these are good people, you can give
Yeah.
freely.
what I love about that is, and I have chills right now. What I love about that, first of all, of course, like just the collective spirit of collaboration, right? Everything I do has to be collaboration. It has to be collaborative, and just getting away from that transactional because it's serving others, right? It's not, I have had this conversation. It's not about us. It's about serving others. And when you lead from that place and everything you do comes from that place, that naturally fulfills all of those values and you're really living them. And I also think like, the conference for me is about that. It's not about me. It's not about how many tickets I sell. It's about the people who are going to come and the people who are going to be served. Also, the people who are going to be served by speaking that day and, what that's going to do and the impact that they're going to have, not just to the people who are listening, but that's going to have on them to build their confidence, build their platform, and all those things. It's just also, I think, and in truth, like, that's one thing I had to come to understand as I grew is it's just giving, and it's giving and not expecting anything in return, but actually the more you give, the more you receive, and that's just
It's
the way
100%
it
that way.
works,
And it's a universe thing, right? Like, I
Yes,
mean, back in the day, the woo woo that they used to say,
yes, yes.
right? And I was like, oh, I don't believe in woo woo, and I was like, I don't believe in woo woo. And so what I used to do that's so hard, like, um, I would, somebody would say, I don't want to lead the pod in Atlanta anymore. And I'd be like, we need to have a pod in Atlanta, right? And I would try so hard to find a replacement or somebody else and do so much energy in a place where I didn't really have any resources to support that. I was
Hmm.
really putting false energy, all this energy. And the reality was it wasn't time for that place to be there anymore.
Right,
And what happened was,
right.
and if you watch, when you let something go, it makes space for something to happen. And I know that that's woo woo to some people, and I know that they don't trust that. But
Hmm.
16 years doing this, where I will lose something and I will mourn it a little bit, but I will release it and let it go and stop trying to make it what it's not supposed to be.
Yes.
Absolutely, almost within the next day, some window of opportunity would show up. I had it on my trip to Spain, right? A woman called and canceled. And I was like, oh, I had just, booked some things and I wanted this many people to come and now she's canceling. I have to refund her money. And I was like upset.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, just it's circumstance. She can't go. I
Yeah.
refund her money. I sent an email. The next day, I get an email. Is there more room on this
Hmm.
retreat for one more person? And I'm like, how is that possible? Because once you let it go, it opens doors.
Yeah, and it's really about, I mean, and really that's a lot of what the basic understanding or principles of this podcast, why I started, is finding the upside. That name is
I love that.
really approaching things as opportunities, right? Not getting bogged down in and you're so right about letting something go. It's sometimes the time is not right. Sometimes it's to open the space for something else to come in. But the challenge is just like that theme, finding the upside. There's always opportunity, but it's how you look at it. So you've got to have that understanding of
That mindset.
that mindset. Exactly, this isn't meant to be, or this is something else is coming, or this is room to open something else, what's next, and being okay with that, because that's just the principle of abundance. I mean, and you said the woo, it's funny because it's just the way it works. But
It
even in
is.
the spiritual world, people who are
Well,
spiritual talk
100%.
about that,
Well,
about
I heard one of the most powerful things, and it's a one word difference, right? And it's from one of the spiritual groups out there. And I was like, this is important. It When something bad happens, don't say, why did that happen to me?
yeah,
Say, why did that happen for me?
for me. Yep.
Right? And when you flip that one word, it's like, what's the lesson here?
Yeah.
What was I holding on to too tightly for?
Yeah.
What was I putting more power behind this than it should have been?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going to happen tomorrow that's going to be better than this?
Yeah. I also had a mentor. She was older woman, and she was a yoga instructor, and she was so zen, and I learned a lot from her. But one of the things she always said, and I always remember it when things, we're human, so I'm human, so sometimes, you can get like flustered because something doesn't go right, or a deal doesn't go through, or something doesn't happen the
Sure.
way you wanted it to, and she always, and then that will happen where it's like, oh, that didn't work out. But then the next day, this is what came my way, right? I always remember she says, it always works out the way it's supposed to. Right. And I always remember that because it's also that natural, you know, ability to have that mindset of being okay with it's not meant to be. So
Yeah.
there's more to come, or there's something else. There's
Yeah.
something else, or there's some other reason. And sometimes it's a lesson, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's a
But
lesson.
you and I also talked, you just can't just sit on the couch and let the
No,
universe happen. I mean, it takes
no.
a lot of effort and a lot of work to try to build some things,
Yeah.
right?
You have to
And
take
it and
action.
you have to put as much energy as you can to making a good outcome and then accept the outcome. Like
Yes.
they tell you not to invest in the outcome, invest in the effort, but
Effort.
not in the outcome.
Yeah, you and I talked about that, and I love that conversation because, it's so in line with focusing on what you're doing and not being tied to a specific outcome. Knowing and trusting this is what I need to be doing, even if you don't know exactly where that's heading, right? Trusting in that and trusting yourself that says, because there's times where I'm doing things where I'm like, I'm not sure exactly where this is going, but I feel like this is what I should be doing right now because this is helping X, Y, or Z, or this feels right. And that's the focus, is not holding on to it has to turn out this way.
Right.
100%. It's so much more of a also peace that you get with that. And also just the energy. I talk all the time. Some people that I talk to don't quite get this or understand it or want to believe it. But when you're stressed out about something, it's the wrong energy. It's the
Oh,
nerve,
well,
of,
if you get in that fight or flight, I mean,
yeah,
this is something we learned from one of these neurology people. When your brain goes into fight or flight, like oh my god, like whether it's a traffic jam or whether
hmm,
and your brain, and we do that all the time, which we should never do. We're not really being traced by a bear here, people. It's just a
right,
traffic light, right? But
right,
when you
right.
go into fight or flight, three-quarters of your brain, the thinking brain, shuts down,
Yeah,
right? And so you're more apt to make the wrong decision when you do that, right?
true.
And you just don't have to live your life rolling the rock up the hill. I mean, I thought, especially when you're growing up in an Irish Catholic background of like, work harder, work harder, work harder, right? You just
Hmm.
think you can work harder through all the solutions, and it's not true. You don't
Yeah,
have to work as hard. And
yeah,
then you take away from the most important people and things in your life. I say this with my kids. I'm like, just stop working, turn the computer off,
yeah.
go for a run,
Be
be
present.
self care.
Hmm.
Whatever this is that they're pushing on this project right now, it's not going to matter
Yeah,
6 months from now.
yeah. Yeah, and it's a reality that so many people face, but it's having that mindset, I think, that allows you to kind of operate and navigate that a little easier. Having a boss that's pushing or a project that has deadlines is always going to be there, but it's really how you navigate it and the mindset that you have that comes with it. And I think that, I can definitely say that my corporate life molded me in ways that weren't so good, in some respects. And it took me a long time to
Oh,
shed
it was
that,
a
where it's like,
culture. It was a
culture.
culture, right? You were in a
This isn't the
culture.
most important thing right now because we're not saving lives. There's something else that's more important, right? But you just really have to be able to navigate that with that mindset, and
And like
understand
you
that.
said, don't beat yourself up over it, right?
Yeah,
At that time, at that thing, that was
yeah,
important. You
yeah,
needed to do what you needed to do so
yeah,
that your child could be set up so that you can, give your family what they needed to give. That doesn't mean like there's another thing. Happiness isn't meaning that you're supposed to be happy every moment of the day,
true,
right? It's that is not the definition of happiness.
true.
It's happiness is like, can you look at your overall thing and say, I have a happy life,
Yeah,
not every moment.
yeah, yeah, so true. Well, Tara, I would love it if you have one more story to share about a big member or a big somebody who came to Big and how you helped. I know we talked about it in our
Yeah,
group
we have
chat,
one.
but I
We
would
have one
love,
that's a good one.
yes.
So there was a woman who had a very nice life. She was married to her second husband. She had grown children, and she had a pretty good business in New Jersey as a massage therapist. And she came to Big probably to find more clients.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was she was in a pod meeting where they talked about living a more fulfilled life, making a bigger impact, like we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how can I make an impact in what's left in my next stage of my life, right? And so, this woman is on the end of her career. She had grown children. It wasn't like she was 20 something trying to figure it out. And she got inspired, and she didn't know the what it was, but she knew she wanted to make an impact. She just couldn't figure out how. She's
Mm-hmm.
like, it would be the kind of impact she wanted to make was like having another child, but she didn't want another child, right?
Right.
So she went to the hospital to do some blood work, and she walked by the kidney donation center at St. Barnabas Hospital. And she looked in there and she goes, I wonder what it would take to donate a kidney.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
like, who thinks like that, right? And she didn't have to donate a kidney. There wasn't somebody in her life that was in need of a kidney or anything. But the fact is that if you altruistically donate a kidney, it has a chain impact because everybody else donates a kidney for it's like a quid pro quo. It's like a
Yep.
transaction. I give you my kidney, you give my uncle your kidney,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
when you put in an altruistic kidney donation into that, it has a domino effect. So as it turns out, to get donate a kidney is a huge deal. You have to go through multitudes of medical exams. You have to go through psychological exams. You have to go through all these tests. And this woman decided that she was going to altruistically donate her kidney.
Wow.
Let her make her impact because she went to a big meeting and she wanted to, and they inspired her. So she comes back to the big meeting and she's like, okay, I figured it out. I'm going to donate a kidney. And they're like, what are
What?
you talking about? And she called me up. I got a letter. I did not know her at the time personally. And I got a letter in like a long letter in the mailbox. It said, Tara, you don't know me. I'm a member of Big in this pod in New Jersey. But if you don't realize that Big physically saves lives, I'm here to tell you it does.
Wow.
And she went on to tell her story. And she went on to tell the story that she was donating her kidney and that the operation was going to happen. She would be happy to share all the details with people so that they could see like the impact.
Mm-hmm.
She donated the kidney, and a week later, she was like food shopping again. It wasn't like she
Wow.
was back in business. She went back to her big meeting and she said, I found my purpose. The kidney donation was my big thing. But now I realize organ donation is something that people should do more of. And I want to be a voice for that.
Wow.
But I don't know. I've never public spoke before. I wouldn't know how to dress. I wouldn't know how to do this. I wouldn't know how to write a presentation. And the women of her pod rallied. And one woman was a stylist, and she says, "I'll put outfits together for her." One woman's like, "I'll write your speech." One woman will say, "We'll practice your presentations." And somebody else said, "I know some organizations that would love to hear you speak." And that was her next phase. That she donated a kidney. She saved 14 lives with that
Wow.
donation. And
Wow.
then she went on with her purpose, which was not massage therapy, although she did that fine, but it was to help change the trajectory of how people donated their organs and
Wow.
save lives. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you can't bottle.
No, for sure. What an amazing story and what an amazing impact. I love that. And it's like through that, it's just what's so interesting. It's like through that act or through that inspiration in that moment, she found this deeper purpose. Like that was what led to it. One thing that leads to another that led to this higher purpose.
And we don't
So
know
much
how
impact.
that triggered into her telling that story in a group of women might have impacted another woman to do something in her life
Yeah.
that she wouldn't have had the courage to do had she not seen that woman
Yeah.
do it.
That ripple effect. It's
Yep.
powerful. It's
It's about
powerful.
overcoming fear
Yeah.
and going for it.
I love it. Well, listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed our
Oh,
conversation.
thank
I
you.
want to
Me
thank you
too.
so much for joining me today and sharing all of these stories and all of the goodness in your journey. For those listening, Tara's information about Big, about how to contact her, all her socials will be in the show notes, as well as our partnership in the event. Hopefully, if there's big women listening, you can still get your tickets, and I would love to see you there. Tara, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. And yes, big women need to go and support each other. We can't be there this year, so we've given you the best opportunity you have in New Jersey. You'll see some familiar faces, and I totally encourage you, follow Maria, follow her podcast, follow what she's doing, because she is one of our sisters. We're very glad to have you.
Thank you so much. Tara, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody listening and watching, thank you for taking time today to be with us on Finding the Upside. We'll see you in the next episode.